Hello everyone, and welcome to the Hytale Modding Guide. So, today we're going to go over the basics of modeling, because we can get a start on modeling before Hytale releases, and have a backlog of different objects, creatures, weapons, all before the game comes out. To begin with, this video is going to be broken down into chapters, so you can select the chapters from the timeline below, and pick whichever parts suit your needs. Chapter 1. Important information. I'm going to supply you all with everything you need to know about modeling just off the bat. You can come back here for reference throughout the video, or you can just use this part if you want to just freehand your modeling. Down below I have a Reddit link, which is to Hytale Dev's version of the player model. You can use this for reference if you don't want to create the model yourself, but you want to use it for a baseline for anything you create. Thank you so much, by the way, to Hytale Dev for supplying us with this, because it is a lifesaver for teaching you how to work with Blockbench and how to go about the Hytale style. Down below, I have a GitHub link to Power by 7's Hytale assets, which consist of block textures, item models, animatable creatures, and more stuff related to Hytale. This is also a brilliant source of reference and understanding how to do things with Blockbench for Hytale. So that's down below if you want to take a look at that as well. Of course, the most important thing you want to install is Blockbench. So go to blockbench.net, and the first thing you want to do is go and hit the download. Install whatever version you need and make sure that's up and running. There are also some important tips that Blockbench has broken down for when you're modeling it for Hytale. You want to have your models built in the generic format, which we'll go over when we go to the Blockbench Basics. Models are built from groups, cubes, and quads, which are all just from cubes. Quads are just cubes where you scale them down to 0. But you should not use any sort of meshes when you are working with Hytale models. The model must face south, which is Z positive in Blockbench. I'll show that in the basics as well. And when you are creating any player-related models and attachments, you should be doing 64 pixels on the object, and other models are 32 pixels. So, for example, if you're making a block or you are making any sort of like object such as a sword, it must be 32 pixels. You want to use the default grid snapping and pixel density, and then just model the object at a larger scale so that it is 1:1 with the ratio of Blockbench. Chapter 2. Installing Blockbench. Once you go to blockbench.net, you can choose to open the web app, or you can just download the app itself. We're going to download it, and I use Windows, so I'm going to install it here. However, if you use any other software, even Linux or Mac, you can download it that way as well. They also have a mobile app, so if you really want to create your models on the go, you're more than welcome to. Once you open up Blockbench, this is what it will look like. I have a few models here from previous attempts of this video. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a generic model. This is the current target to Hytale. This may later change as you see this, because the Blockbench plugin hasn't been implemented for Hytale yet. So it might have a separate Hytale version with a generic model and certain things there for you to use. But for the moment, if you see it now, you just open up generic model and you can create a new model. Chapter 3. Blockbench Basics. We're going to name this Basics because I want to show you how to use Blockbench in this part, and then later on I'll cover objects such as blocks and then also player models. Name it Basics and you're going to hit confirm. The controls for Blockbench, if you've never used a software like this before, if you hold left click, that will let you drag around and look around. Right click will move your camera left and right. Scroll wheel will zoom in and out. And then up on the top left here, we have a few tools. I'm going to show you how these work by going all the way to the right here, where it says add element. You're going to go and add a cube. We're starting with a cube because the Hytale models use only cubes when modeling. Once you have your cube in, you can click any of these arrows to move it in its given direction. So along the x-axis, the y-axis, and also the z-axis. The main way we want our model to face, if we're working in Hytale, is, see how this is north here? We want our model to face this direction. So when working, this blue arrow points to where we want to go. which is south. You can then click this button here, which is the resize. And you can drag out like this on any direction. And if you want to drag out on both sides at the same time, hold Alt and then drag, and that will do both sides at the same time. As you can see, it makes it very simple for quickly scaling objects. What if you want this cube a different way? Well, we obviously have our rotate, which will rotate alongside its pivot. Key thing about the pivot is you might have to readjust it because it's not always where you want it to be. As you can see with this cube, we may want to rotate it alongside this corner here. So if you press this pivot tool here, you take control of this little circle and you can move it to where you want it to be. We want it in this top corner. And then if we go back to rotate, as you can see, now, whoops, when we rotate, it's alongside that point that we targeted. What I recommend you do, if you are completely new, is get used to the hotkeys for move, resize, and rotate and pivot. Because if you can get used to the fact that move is V, resize is S, rotate is OR, and P is your pivot, you can do things a lot quicker than having to manually click up here every time. And remember, Control S to save your model. Do that always. Other things I'm going to let you know about that will help you while you're modeling. If you go to View here, you can toggle the grids. And you can also toggle a pixel grid if you want to do that as well. This helps you break down the actual pixel size of an object. And also, if you want to add a reference image, let's say you're working with a certain model or style. If you go into your browser and you pull any image, so if you pull any image from the browser, you can hold on it, drag and drop it into Blockbench, and that will add a reference image, which will always stay behind the model. You can double click the reference image to move it around, and you can press delete if you want to delete it as well. That concludes everything with the basics of Blockbench. From here, we're going to get started with our block model. We're going to add our cube. And if you haven't got a viewing already, we're going to go to View, and we're going to enable Pixel Grid. This will let us see the scale of the pixels on the cube itself. Before we resize the cube, we're going to go up to the top left where UV is, and we're going to change it to 32 by 32. If you're wondering what a UV is, it's the actual texture of the object. For example, in Minecraft, when you're making your character, it's the same sort of texture style that you work with. Hey, if you've been enjoying this video so far and would like to see more content like this, do consider dropping a like and subscribing down below, as we're going to be going back to a weekly content schedule, and it will be filled with both Hytale and game dev. Anyways, back to the video. Chapter 4, Block Modeling. We're going to scale this up to 32 by 32 by 32. We're going to drag it to the center, or close enough to it. We're not going to worry too much about it for the moment. And this is our cube. It has 32 by 32 in texture density. Now, since we're working with a basic cube, we're going to do something simple, and that's we're going to add a texture. I'm going to create a texture here. We're going to keep the pixel density as 16 times, because that's the original Blockbench density. If we adjust that, it gets messy. So we're going to call this the grass block. We're going to hit confirm. With this, we may want to pull in a reference image. So I'm going to go and search up. We're going to go to the GitHub, block models, block textures, sorry, and we're going to look for a grass one, or any particular one you want to work with. And then when you find it in the GitHub, you can drag and drop it in. So as you can see, I've grass block side. I'm going to use that as a reference image so that we can work with. Now, I can use this to see how to work with this block here. We're going to mess with the texture, and we're going to mess with this side. To go into paint mode, you click the paint up here, or you press E. E will also access paint mode. Some other tips: you can either hit color and just work with any color you want in a HSV value, as you can see, hue, saturation, and value. Or you can go to palette and you can load color palettes that you want. I recommend, if you're looking for color palettes, go to lost spec. You can style the palette to what you want with your own modeling. as you can see, we can see how the grass block has its two core colors. We're going to go and grab a brown. So we're going to go to color. We're going to drag it down to orange and bring it down to brown. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab the paint bucket and fill a side in first. The first thing you want to work with when you're doing this is take a look at how the style works. For Hytale, there is a darkened shade underneath. Pretty simple. And then it's a noisy texture. The main thing you want to work with is a smooth paintbrush. For the moment anyways. We're looking at this reference here and we see that it gets lighter down the bottom half. We're going to use our noise paintbrush. We're going to use a size of 5. Opacity is full and softness is 70. We're just going to draw this in. We're going to go all the way up to here. We're going to go down, up, down, up, down. This won't look perfect, but it's just a rough guide on how we can go about it. You can leave a little bit of noise in using the softness and not worry about that either. Now, we can see there's a few little dabbles. We're going to go size 1. We're going to just add it in like this. We're just going to drag around, just fill it in, make it look a little bit messy, add some darker patches as well. Add it even darker. And the main thing you want to do is just add some detail into this image. Now, this is the base part of the grass block done. As we can see, the upper half consists of greens and dark greens. So we're going to grab a dark green to begin with, and we're gonna fill it in. We're gonna go here. Remember, Control Z to undo anything you're not happy with. We're just gonna fill this all the way in. It's a little bit rough, but we can keep adjusting and tweaking things as we need. Put it to 1 if you want to get in closer. And then we want the lighter colors. Now this grass, it's not going to look as accurate to what this grass looks like because it's more warm, it's more orange. You'd be wanting to look up here for colors like that. As you can see, that's that green that you're looking for. However, we're using a more colder green down on this end. So now we want to add in the detail. Simply, you want to use a 1 size pixel, go like this, and you want to leave gaps. You want to just kind of color it in while leaving some gaps around that we're going to go back over in a moment. Kind of draw it similarly. We can use this as the reference for the moment, but if you're going freehand, you could use this same sort of style. You leave some gaps, you add some shading, some lighting, and we can go back over it after as well. The main thing you want to emulate is like the grass blades for this one, which, as you can see, you just kind of drag them around like this. And there we have it. Now, as we can see, on the top left, it seems to be lighter than the bottom right. So we're going to add in some dark, but not as dark. And we're just going to go back over here. Just shade it in with this lighter color as well. We're going to add a little bit of it throughout the rest to just add some visual noise. Just by clicking a few times, you can get that in. You can adjust the softness if you want, but there we go. We're also going to go back to the browns. We're going to go down and we're going to add in some reddish browns as well. Just for some visual noise to break up the image itself. There we go. We may want to hide the painting grid. And there we have it. We have a Hytale grass block. It's not perfect. There are a few issues. However, this is the sort of style you want to go with when you're making your Hytale models. Of course, we don't have it on any other side. But we know that the white side is the top and the grey side is the bottom. So what we can do, if we want to, we can go to the texture by clicking this selection tool, dragging all the way over 32 by 32, Control C, Control V, and we can move it to every side that we want it on. So we're just going to copy this over. We're going to see how it looks now. For the most part, it looks good. We see there's a few issues with it being seamless on all sides. We can adjust that as necessary, but all of a sudden we have the block texture on all sides. We have multiple layers. I completely didn't see the layer section, but we're going to copy with the selection tool. We're going to grab all the way to here, Control C, Control V, to a new layer. We're going to paste it here. We're just going to Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. It's going to look rough and it's on the wrong side. Whoops, we put it on the top instead of bottom. We can quickly fix that by first merging this layer down. So now this is a single piece. As you can see, this is a dirt layer. What we're going to do is we're going to go to selection. We're going to select this entire cube. And we're going to move it up to here on the UV. Now it's on the bottom. It's not perfect, but we can keep adjusting it where we need to. Same thing for the grass. We want the top of it to kind of fit in with everything else. So what we can do is if we go back to here, we can see which layer this is. We can then copy, Control C, Control V, and we can place it here. C, Control V. We have it here again. Control C, Control V. We can move it up. We're just going to merge each layer down so that the grass layer is its own thing. Now, this is where we can adjust things, make it look better, because of course the texture is looking a little bit wrong on the top because of the fact we merged them. So what we can do is we can go back to the greens that we were working with in the paint mode, turn on the pixel painting grid, go to the paintbrush, and we can readjust everything that we need. We know we have dark lines coming from here, so we're just going to bring them back up onto the grass side so that it makes more sense, while the light lines are coming from there. Then we know that the issue is some of the light areas are being forgotten, so we will grab the lighter one and we will paint here with a lighter color. So what we're mainly doing here is trying to get the texture to fit correctly on the top while still retaining the grass style that we want. The main difference is we have some dark areas, some light areas from below, but we can just readjust as needed. As you can see, it looks a lot better now. However, here looks repeated. So what we'll do is we'll break up the visual repeat by adding in different colors and textures here. Once we break up the visual repeat, that's what we need. Same here, same repeats. We want it noisier than repetitive. Once we've broken that up, we can turn off the pixel grid to see what it looks like. It's not looking too bad. There is still some issues here. However, we have created our very first Hytale styled grass block. Remember to save and make sure that it's not forgotten. It's not perfect, but that's how we can use a reference like this to create our own style block with our own version of the top and color. This is a warm one, this is a colder one. If you're working on other blocks, you can use the actual way the blocks are styled as a reference to how to go about it and just create your own one. But I just wanted to show you something simple and an example on how you can work with references to create the objects you want. Right, that's everything to do with creating blocks. We're going to move on to making player models next. Chapter 5, Player Modeling. Once you come to the front of Blockbench, to create a player model, you can either go to the generic model, create a new model, and then go about it yourself using cubes and such. I'll open this up for example, but it's not how we're going to use it. We're going to create a new model. We're going to call this player. And we're going to give it a texture size of 64 by 64 and confirm. The reason why we need to use 64 by 64 is because the players are more detailed than blocks when it comes to Hytale. I'm pretty sure this also includes creatures in the world. So correct me if I'm wrong down below, you should use this way for creating players and creatures. Now, to first create the player's head, you're going to add a cube, and you're going to change the size of it to 64 by 64 by 64. And you're going to move this over to here. Right, perfect. You want to zoom out and bring it out as far as you can. And from here, you have the player's head. You can make the rest of the body, but the common tip I will tell you is to add groups. Do leg L, do a, whoops, put that out here. Do a leg or. You want to also have body. So the body layer will have its own cube. It will also hold leg left, leg right. And then you can Control C, Control V. These will have. And then you want to also have arm or and arm. Pretty much, when you work in Blockbench, you want all your stuff to be in groups. I'll show you a reason for this. So if I go out here and I add another cube, and I add another cube, and we're going to do it down here just for the moment. Let's say this is the player's arm, and we want to, we have it here. Don't know why we have another cube. Oh, whoops. I'll move that out. And delete that. Move that. So we have two cubes. We want to rotate this arm. However, we're rotating each one individually. We create that group. Put the two cubes in the group. We can now rotate the group itself. This is very important for animating or doing anything with the model itself. Bring the pivot tool with P. Bring it up. Go back to rotate with OR. And there we go. We have an arm that rotates. Of course, we actually have to have it to the right scale, but we're not going to worry about that. You can create your models from scratch like this. Maybe for creatures or enemies, you can work on it that way. The main rule is have your model objects. And then if you want to add, let's say, facial details on this player. We want to have an eyebrow. We're going to scale this up. Maybe a unibrow. We're gonna make them have a unibrow real quick. You don't use the cubes like this. You're going to scale them down until they're a single pixel. Now, remember, when creating your model, have a face on this side here. Whoops. And the reason for this is because it needs to face south. So have your model always face the arrow. So when you're working on everything, have it face this way. And another tip, when you're scaling, it will scale by one unit at a time. If you hold Control, it will scale by 0.1 of a unit. If you hold Control and Alt, it will scale both sides by 0.1. And if you hold Alt, it will just scale by 1 unit on both sides. We're going to save that as a player model. It's basic, but for the moment, it shows you how to create the model and how to work with the UVs and everything with it. Now, if you are more experienced, you can change the UV to like 512 by 512 to make a single texture. And then you can work with the UV itself and move things to where you want it. So when it's, sorry, undone that. So let's say you want the actual UV for this to move somewhere else. You can move the unibrow UV over to here, while the player model UV is on the left side. I'll show you an example with the main model itself. To get the base model Hytale character, which we can use for a reference, go to the Reddit link down in the description. Download the files by Hatsuadev. Again, thank you so much for having the base model created. And from there, what we can do is, when you have the model, you'll double click it to open it, and then go back into Blockbench, and you'll see it in front of you. We're going to go to View and turn off the pixel grid for the moment, just to break things down. But this is the base Hytale model, as we know right now. It is separated into several parts, as you can see. You have a waist, a belly, a chest, shoulder left, elbow left, hand left. The list goes on. You can follow this if you're working on your own model and use it as a reference point. Now, when you take a look, as I said before, everything is contained on a singular UV map. As you can see, the whole head is just here, and it's on a 256 by 256. Maybe that's a good reference instead of the 512 by 512. If we want to change the face, we can actually drag it down, and all of a sudden we have a different face style. Because thankfully, Atsuya Dev gave us several different styles to work with to begin with. We're going to bring it back to the default one for the moment, and bring the head back to where it's supposed to be. Now, if you want to work on your own hair or anything, let's say you're working on the head, you want to create a new, in the head, you want to fold things up so that you can see what you're doing, but you can add in your new cube. Let's say this is your hair. You can then bring it up, alt scale it. Now this looks horrible, but don't worry about it for the moment. Let's say you want just a blob of hair for the character. Right, there we go. Totally professional hair. If you want to add extra detail to the hair, the main way Hytale does it is you scale it down till it's a plane, and then you work on it this way. Let's say you want to have like little pieces of the hair falling at the front of the character. You can hold you can hold Control to bring it in by 0.1 at a time. Control C, V, Control C, V, Control C, V, Control. And there you have it. You have extra detail at the front of the player model. Of course, if you want to texture it, it's the same process as before. But you'll notice one thing is these UVs are not on the actual base model texture. That is because we need to actually move them there. When you click on a UV, by the way, it lets you know which part is facing on what direction here, which makes it a lot easier to work with. Now, we want all of these to contain this texture. You'll see that it goes horribly wrong for a moment. Don't worry about it. What we will do is we will add this texture to everything that we have. As you can see, we can move this piece of the hair over to the right. So we can use this overlay for an example so that we can work with. We can see all the hair pieces are all separated and we need to work with them. You can open this up if you want to work in here on its own. Hold Control to go and move in and out. Drag these over. So if we want to get all of them at the same time, we can do this. Maybe, for example, these strands of hair could all be the same. So what we can do is we can pop them all on top of each other. And that will let us just texture all of them in one go rather than separate goes. And then, of course, not every part of this cube is on the texture. We do have to apply it on each piece. But, for example, now if we go to paint, we can now paint anything on these planes. Or I thought. Oh, get the paintbrush out. And as you can see, all of these, because we placed them on each other, have the same piece. Which means when we want to color one of them, it colors all of them. And it just helps from having to deal with them all separately. Now we can give them all golden tones. And that works out much better. We can also fill here, here, and here. And that fixes that issue of these parts as well. Now, of course, we actually want the texture to work. We need to drag it onto every single piece. So if we grab it and drag and drop, we can actually texture the whole set of hair all correctly and the way we want. Of course, there's multiple sides to every object, and there are other ways to drop the texture on, but for the moment, this is a simple way. And we want to make sure the UVs are correct. So we're going to go back to the UV Go back to edit if we want to tweak the UV. I'm just slow. We want to make sure each one of these models has all its pieces up at the top. What we do notice is for stuff like these hair pieces, they are not all where we want them to be. So we can drag them, move them over. Try not rescale them because that will screw up their UV. We can move the up to here, move the east to here, and the west to there. We can move this one also on top. Up all the sides on together. Then we can go back to paint. And then if we fill one of them, it will fill all of them. It makes it a lot easier for certain things. Of course, if you need to separate them, you can separate them that way too. We have accidentally painted the character yellow, but we're not going to worry about that. That was a mistake just here, as you can see. However, once we have them all here, and we're happy, this is how our character looks. Even if there's a few issues, that's how it looks. And yeah, that's the basics of player modeling. So, a lot of player modeling is creating the objects, building the shape, and then you need to go back into where the shapes are in the UV, move them around, and then you can paint them and texture them correctly. It takes some time, however, once you get used to the workflow, it will be a lot easier and simpler. Chapter 6, my tips. So I have a few tips for you when you are modeling that will help speed up your workflow. Those tips are, to begin with, have a reference on hand at all times. Always drag and drop an image into the scene to use as a reference. You can always delete one by double clicking it and hitting delete if you don't want it. You can have multiple references or just one. It all works out pretty well. I also recommend that you take your time. Make sure once you have your model done up that you then go back and work on that UV. You want the UV to have everything separate, or if you have certain things that are the same sort of texture, to repeat those in the same places. The UV is the most important before you paint anything. Of course, if you're making a simple object like a dirt block, the UV is something you don't have to worry about. But when it comes to players or creatures, that's where you want to focus on it the most. I also recommend when you are doing your modeling, keep in the scale. If you're making a block, make sure it is 32 by 32. Remember, the scale for the player alone is 64 by 64. When you're painting the models themselves, always use a soft brush. Soft brushes will let you add that sort of high resolution onto the mesh without sacrificing time, because you realistically cannot pixel perfect paint a model such as these. There's too many pixels. I also recommend, finally, have fun. Enjoy your time modeling. If it's not for you, ask someone else to do it for you. But I hope everything you've seen in this video so far has helped you and that you are able to get started on Hytale modeling. This is the first part of a several part guide for everything to do with Hytale modding. The next part will cover JSON, and then the part after that will cover the structure of code and the fundamentals of Java, so that you can understand and get a kickstart on creating mods from scratch. However, for the most part, you'll be able to just do everything you want by watching this video. So if you've made it this far, I hope you've all enjoyed. Do consider joining the Discord below and subscribing, because I'll keep you up to date on everything Hytale, while also showing other stuff to do with game dev itself, if you're interested. But if you join the Discord, we will have a Hytale server coming up day 1, with both a survival and creative world. And any mods you create, any models, anything at all, if you want to have added to the server, we will be holding polls, and the winners will always get added on the next server update. So yeah, that's everything for this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.